Welcome to Memory Lanes, the housing industry podcast by the Oracle Group and Define Creative. This podcast features guests from the sector talking about the most memorable homes they've lived in.
It's a chance to get to know the person behind the LinkedIn profile.
Marco and Anna, thanks so much for coming to chat to us today, and welcome to the Memory Lanes little studio here in Borough.
It's a real pleasure.
It's great to have you here. Be good to just start off by introducing yourselves and what you do at R3location, and then we'd love to hear about how you kind of came to work together and the amount of time you've worked together for and your kind of professional relationship.
So I'm Marco. I work at R3location with Anna. We own the company together. We started it about 12 years ago, I would say. I do the finance, compliance and research side of things, really. So my background is finance. I'm a chartered accountant by profession. I qualified a long time ago now. And after 8 or 9 years of specializing in corporate tax advisory, of all things, I decided to go back into a more commercial role. And in 2005, after a few months spent searching, I joined a company called Previero and Relocation, who was a subsidiary here in the UK as part of Prudential Financial, so a large sort of relocation company in the US, Prudential Real Estate and Relocation Services, as their European head of finance, and Anna was the MD.
So Anna, you interviewed Marco, didn't you?
I did, yes. Fast forward. And I was the MD of Previero, and Mark, we were looking for a new finance director. And we had been struggling and looking in various recruitment companies, and nobody was really suitable. And Marco walked through the door, and within probably 5 minutes, I think I knew absolutely 100% that he was going to be the right person for that job. And I have to say, it's probably the best recruit I've ever made. And all these years, 12 years later, now at R3, we have very different skill sets to this day. I know slightly more about finance than I did before, but my role is purely operational and client relationships. So our skill sets are completely different, which is why, when we set out 12 years ago, it made sense to found R3 with two very different paths and sort of specialities, really.
So just thinking about starting a business together, there must have been a lot of trust between you. I know you say your skill sets are really different, but from what I can see personally, you come at things very differently.
We do.
Anyway.
We do, and we still do.
So is that the secret to your...
Yeah, I don't know it's the secret so much, but we do see things very, very differently. And I think if we had been a one-man band, we probably would have progressed a bit more quickly. But because we are two people making every decision together, we have probably been more successful and made less mistakes, because there are two of us.
Yeah.
And it's really important when it is your money you're spending. It's every penny counts when it's yours. And so it's important to be able to have somebody to bounce those ideas off. And somebody who perhaps doesn't have the same opinion as you is a really, really good thing. So I think you have to look at the whole thing. And because we've known each other and for 20 years and been in business together for 12, it gets easier, all the way down the line. But we've never, ever, ever fallen out. Not once.
Yeah.
Never. No, nor will we. I think we just understand each other so well now that I think we just not waste time, really.
We have a sort of an intuitive sense of like things, and obviously sort of it's different to put it into words, but we have an understanding of the reason why we work well together. Sense, yes, I would say so.
Yeah, I agree.
It sounds like the understanding is quite a key part of your relationship.
I think so. But it's intuitive. You can't really put it into words. It's hard.
Yeah. It's hard to put that into words, isn't it? It really is. It's just knowing somebody really well and trusting one another.
I think so.
Yeah. And being tolerant, are we tolerant?
And that as well.
Which is really important, because I'm sure there are multiple times where Anna is very frustrated in the way in which I do things, and equally there are multiple times in which I'm very frustrated in the way she does it. Because we're different people and because we do things differently.
Emotions must be quite high, because obviously you're dealing with people's lives moving. So your clients aren't like you think of other businesses where they might be a little bit more relaxed. Like this is
it's so personal.
It's so personal. It's quite difficult to manage, I imagine, those situations.
It's really difficult to manage because of all the things that make up each individual family or each individual move. So, you have people who are moving their dogs, their cats, their horses, their fish. It's not just packing up a box, stuff in a cardboard box and shipping over a sofa or bed. And it's not, you're coming to London. It's easy because everybody speaks English here. It's really difficult. It's really difficult. And it's basically just a massive jigsaw puzzle with moving parts all the time that we are controlling the whole of the puzzle. And sometimes the pieces just don't fit as exactly as you would like them to do in the time that you've got to do the puzzle. And then some things do go wrong, but we are there to sort of give solutions, give options, try and make it better, and to be calm and patient because there's plenty of anxiety going. It's the most stressful thing you can do.
I was just thinking that the most
after
stressful
death
thing.
and divorce, apparently moving country is the most stressful thing you can do. So we're all here to make sure that it is as smooth as possible, and you anticipate as far in advance as you can. Which is great if you're told by a mobility or HR person that you've got weeks to plan or months to plan. But often these guys are turning around in a month. Yeah, and it's really tough. Really, really tough.
See, I'm moving just 200 metres down the road, and it's been taking 6 months. And that's I can't imagine.
And you can take your
I can't imagine.
Yeah, exactly. I could just
No.
walk him down the street. So yeah, gosh. So I'm desperate to hear more because I don't know anything sort of about your kind of backgrounds or where you grew up. So obviously this podcast involves sort of talking about some particular or special homes that you've lived in. So should we dive into that?
Let's talk about the home that you want to share with us then. Do you want to start then, Anna?
Yeah. So the home I want to talk about really is the home that my husband and I found together by mistake. We had a screaming toddler in a pram. I was like, for goodness sake, walk this child in this pram. Do not come. We're not coming home until this child shuts up. And we found ourselves in miles and miles from home. And we found ourselves in this amazing enclave of oasis of lovely sort of green trees and the tennis court in the middle and fabulous Victorian houses around. And we sort of went, where are we? And eventually realised we were in Streatham. Quite pioneering in the day because it was sort of 20 plus years ago. And but it had an instantly fabulous feel. And so we put an offer on a house that was accepted and we moved in. And lived in it for a year, realising that we wanted to change absolutely everything about it. So we moved out for 6 months and completely rebuilt it to our own specification, which in itself was a wonderful thing to be able to do.
What age was the house?
1800s. And I've never done that since, but it was such an exciting time to actually sort of be, involved in a complete refurb. But what we didn't know at the time was that the place was really family-oriented. So every single house virtually in our sort of square, and there's a tennis club in the middle, which apart from Wimbledon is the oldest one in London, was that everybody had sort of same age type children. So we suddenly all put gates in our garden fences, so all the kids could run the back of the garden. So somebody bought a slide, somebody bought a swing, somebody bought a trampoline,
You all shared it.
and the kids just ran up and down. And then suddenly it was, there were lots of sort of street parties. The Halloween was hilarious because it was just trick-or-treating beyond. And it was we trying to outdo each other with sort of costumes and silly
Alcohol involved for the parents, maybe
just the odd tinge.
Yeah.
Thing. And then when the children got older, it was school run time because everybody went to the same sort of schools, and that was like army, on manoeuvre. It was such a massive thing because there were so many kids going to the same schools, and we literally almost hired minibuses to get them all there. And it was just one of those fantastic things that everything centred around this tennis club. So all the kids played tennis, they all went to nursery in the pavilion, and it was just a really fabulous community. And I think part of that sort of comes with me to R3location as well, because it's how you can help people to form that. Because, when you arrive in London and you're suddenly here, they might know, I've got a friend in South Kensington, I've got a friend in Holland Park. You might, but they may be going to work. And it's just, how can the community support you? Especially if you're the person not going to work and you're the person staying at home and having to deal with everything on a daily basis. So taking some of that community spirit is a really important thing, I think, and makes a move much, much smoother.
And especially with young children, I love the phrase, it takes a village, because it really does.
It does.
And you talking about having your neighbours all nearby and helping and sharing your gardens, like that's what it should be like.
And for your
shouldn't it?
children, that must hold so many lovely memories. I mean, that's the dream, having friends to play
gosh,
out with
how
all the
much
time.
fun.
They're 23 and 25, or they're actually 10 and 12. No, they're not. They're 23 and 25, and they're still really, really close with the kids they met when they were 3. Yeah, still. We haven't all moved very far away from Streatham, it has to be said, and they see each other a lot. But no, it was a really, and especially when it's a time when I'm working full time, I've got small children, everything is so busy, and those people were my lifeline, and still my greatest girlfriends today.
Yeah, because when you've got small children, you need people to talk to and have fun with and moan to and share your frustrations with. It's so important for parents to have that, I think, that support and that community. And then, the kids to have those lovely memories.
So I had 3 children, and when they were very, very, and I grew up I was born and brought up in the south of France. I came over to the UK when I was 16, finished my schooling, and then I stayed on and really spent most of my growing up years in London. But when my children were very little, so I got married, I had 3 children. When they were very little, we decided to move to the country. We felt it was just a better environment. Just below Tunbridge Wells, a little village called Frant, to a very old 17th century rectory, which happened to be next to the church where I got married with my now ex-wife, although we're still very good friends in very good terms. And we redid all of it. So essentially, we just
Also did a renovation.
We did a massive renovation job. It was a beautiful house, a beautiful rectory, beautiful garden, and for 3 or 4 years we had a really fabulous time. And my middle daughter, who's now 18, and with some side effects from what she had in 2013 when she was 7. So she was diagnosed with brain cancer. She lost her sight overnight and woke up in the morning and couldn't really see anything.
So this home that you're talking about, it obviously has some wonderful memories.
Some wonderful memories, at the same time some awful memories. So that's, for 12 months really, she was treated at Great Ormond Street Hospital. We went up and down from it, and then it took a long time for her to really regain any semblance of her regular self. And so it's a house really that that I have loved at the beginning, but represents the best of times and the worst of times in many ways. I no longer live there. We moved back to London for schooling reasons, predominantly. And so I remember it with mixed affections, but at the same time, it's the house where I lived at a time in my life where, although heart-wrenching, I had probably the most meaningful time of all.
Because a horrible event like that kind of changes your perspective on life, how you approach everything.
It kind of changes your perspective of housing. I thought I was going to be really sad to leave the house. It was beautiful, in a beautiful setting. But actually, a few years on, I don't really miss it at all, in a sense. And I think it has provided really me with a different sense of perspective about the importance of real estate. I still remember. It's a slightly analog story, but I remember when we were looking for schools for my eldest, and we were looking at Brighton College. And Brighton College is a very, very good school down in Brighton, and but it's not in a particularly nice area of Brighton, and the buildings themselves are not particularly nice, and certainly they don't compare with some of the slightly more old-fashioned school buildings that private schools tend to have. And I think houses is the same, really. What's important is the space between walls. It's the life that happens within it, as opposed to the bricks and mortars that surround.
Absolutely.
Which it brings you so much to what you do today, because obviously you're relocating families.
Absolutely.
Must have been in their homes for years, and then there you are guiding them on, and they must realise that it's family. That's what matters.
The case in point, when Marco, it's that JFK moment, everybody knew where they were when he was shot. I, to this day, know exactly what I was doing when Marco told me about Millie. And you're living and breathing that with him, and trying to support in a way that the only way that I could, which was keeping the business running, was it was just an extraordinary year. I think brought us closer together. And certainly I absolutely wanted R3 to flourish, because he was doing something that was so much more important and that there came a time when you went to the States. Millie had to have therapy, proton beam in the US. So I was left in London to sort of carry on going. And Marco did exactly what I was doing, but as well as looking after his daughter, was also sorting out the company as well on a daily basis. Not one of our clients had any idea that we were in different countries. Nobody knew a thing about what was happening in Marco's life. We just carried on going, and for all intents and purposes, we were still open sort of the 8:30 to the 6:30, 5 days a week, and nobody had any idea that we were actually operating in completely different countries on different time zones.
I mean, emotionally, that I can't imagine the toll and how difficult that must have been, but logistically as well, was this a time before, obviously everyone's jumping on Zoom calls?
Oh, it was way before
Way before that, yeah.
Way before.
How did that work?
Well, we did. I mean, we had Skype, to be fair. So Skype was used, but it was mostly used sort of, to call your parents on as opposed to
To do business on.
And yes, I mean, it was a very difficult period in my life. Equally, my role always has been sort of back office function. So in a sense, when you have to purchase invoice and file VAT returns, it doesn't really matter where you are or what time we're doing it. And it was a welcome distraction really from the day to day in any sense. And I think that it reinforced. I'm going to be nice to you now. It reinforced. It did reinforce the sort of the trust that they have with each other. And I'm always going. I mentioned Anna in my first book. Actually, I've written a couple of books, and how grateful I am because I did have that support.
Yeah.
And it's the reason I forgive Anna on a daily basis.
Is it? Okay.
Because I did not think so, I think it might have been different. But no. But yeah. So yes, it was a difficult time. But we made it work, and we made it work as a family, and we made it work in terms of the business that we had. We had only really started a year before.
It was really new. It was really new.
Kind of new.
So we were busy getting clients on board. Then we were busy sort of transporting them into the UK and finding them houses, finding them schools, settling them in, and it was all very, very new and very early days. So we were literally all hands on deck, except he was in the States.
Credit to Anna for sticking at it and running the show.
Well, it was easier to do that than look after a very, very sick child.
And your relationship would have been key to that whole period as well. You're both getting through that.
Yeah.
together.
Yeah, I think so.
So you've written a couple of books, you said, about that experience. And what
Go ahead and plug them.
No, I want to.
Now is your moment.
I read an article in The Independent that you'd written.
Yes. So The Independent was my first book, I think, which is called Dear Millie, The Diary of a Child with Cancer. When I was going through, when essentially parents are newbies, as most of us are, when, we drive blind when those types of events tend to happen. And I entered a world that I really, didn't understand at all with terminology. I didn't really understand craniopharyngiomas, astrocytomas, PI protocols and so on. And in order to make sense of it, really very shortly after she was diagnosed, I started writing notes at the end of the day. And then I thought to myself, wouldn't it be nice if, rather than writing notes, I could write something slightly more meaningful, initially really to preserve the detail so easily forgotten about what was happening to us as a family, and more importantly, if Millie was going to survive it, so that she could then read back her story at a time in her life when she was better able to understand what happened to her. And so the notes became a book, and Great Ormond Street Hospital were very supportive in getting published. It's written in support of Gosh, that particular one, and on occasion I still have the odd emails from parents saying, I've read your book, Gosh, it's been helpful.
And how does that feel when you receive those?
Yeah, it feels amazing, really, that you can, in a very small way help another family that has gone through.
Yeah. And when her sight first came back, she was able to draw, and the first thing that she drew was an outline of a butterfly.
Exactly, yes.
And that is printed in the book, and it's why the jacket has a butterfly on the front of it. And it's in her words and her writing about what it was like and how she felt, and it's through the words of an 8-year-old. So it's really emotional and really poignant. And because I'd say I lived it, I didn't live it, he lived it. But because it was so close to all of us at the time, that is the bit that gets me every time. It really is. But the fact is that she is a bright, lovely 18-year-old and is doing really well.
She's doing well. And my second book, briefly, so I'm a trustee of a charity that was started by one of the lead endocrinologists at Great Ormond Street Hospital. So I'm one of the founding trustees. And really we look after survivors of childhood brain tumor in order to give them a better life. So when you're diagnosed with brain cancer as a child, 80% of those children actually survive, but they're left with really lifelong side effects. And whilst the care is exceptional during the acute phase of treatment, it really is quite lacking during the rest of their lives. And they tend to live very long lives beyond diagnosis. So I think the average lifespan is 68 to 70 years post your age of diagnosis. So they live long lives, but they live long lives with really invisible disabilities that can affect the way in which they're able to engage with the outside world. So as part of my role with that charity, we in collaboration with the charity, I wrote a second book called Walking on the Edge. And really it's the sort of the 5 years post-diagnosis when I started walking quite a lot with Millie and starting a sort of dialogue to try and understand her point of view, how she felt about some of the disabilities that she had encountered as a result of brain cancer, and how she felt about the prospect of, a future life with some of the limitations that she would have had. So we weren't really father and daughter in that sense. We were really sort of, fellow travellers to try and figure out a way home. And a way forward. So that book is in support of Success Life After Cure, and that came out a couple of years ago. Yeah.
Wow. My gosh.
Such a beautiful way.
Yeah, and quite a therapeutic experience, I imagine.
Yes, I mean, I think it was also partly a way to escape the day to day and trying to make sense of a situation that doesn't really make sense. And so it was helpful. It was helpful to me, and hopefully it'll be helpful to really later on to read back on those experiences.
Absolutely, yeah.
But she has since regained her eyesight, and she's been in complete remission since really 6 months after treatment started.
Oh, wow. Amazing.
She does so well. So well.
Finishing her A-levels this year. That does have limitations as a result of the treatment and the cancer itself, but really has the prospect of a full and independent otherwise.
Oh wow! So this home that you lived in, where it was happening, and have you ever been back there? Have you ever walked past it?
We lived for 7 years post diagnosis and post treatment. No, I'm not going to crack that joke.
Shall I fill it in for you? No, because we can do that.
Okay.
And it does include some awful memories, but some very happy ones too. I think it was probably helpful in the long term to move away from it, because I think the tangible aspect of real estate does matter in the context of how you form and keep memories in your brain, and certainly. In Millie's room will always have a degree of connotation around that particular time, and now that I'm in a different place, I don't have that anymore. I don't have the sort of that tangible hook that takes me back to
Constant reminder.
Exactly. So I haven't been back. I don't think I would feel any sense of sadness about going back. Things happen. Shit happens, as they say.
Yeah,
but it did give you an idea, though, going to the States and with the whole family and finding schools for your children.
Yeah,
it really made you he experienced what all our customers do.
I did.
That moving country and finding a house and finding schools, but also looking after Millie
with
at
an
the same
extra
time.
anxiety
With an extra.
added on.
Yeah. And lots of families do have not maybe that particular anxiety, but lots and lots of families do arrive with children with special needs or, various things that you have to take into account. And, various things. So.
And what was particularly helpful to sort of continue to draw on that analogy was the fact that I managed to connect with someone in Oklahoma City, which essentially worked with me as a local consultant to help me with, with housing and schools and so And so I was really able to make that,
Yeah.
that very real connection between what I was experiencing and the services that I deliver or that we deliver as a company.
And it sounds like it's kind of affected the way you feel about home, and that you might have a less attachment to a particular. It's not about the building or the kitchen or the sofa or all the time you put into probably choosing things when you renovated that house. I imagine that was probably a stressful period in itself for some reasons.
Yeah, for sure.
But all that kind of doesn't matter.
I think that's entirely right, and I think in a sense, that's one of the positive aspects of it, is the fact that you start drawing less attachment to the real estate, and as I said before, and more importance to the life you live within those walls. That's the really important aspect of it, and I still maintain that outlook, really.
Yeah.
I don't really form any particular attachment to where I live, as long as everybody there is comfortable.
Yeah, so that's just a completely different perspective, isn't
Which
it?
is very opposite to how people feel about their houses.
Exactly, and you're the first person we've had that said that. So it's really nice to hear, and it makes complete sense. It makes me rethink about how I think about my home, actually, and what I attach importance to in my home.
I feel a third book coming on. What about questions and funny things that we've ever been asked?
Yeah,
It's
you
not
could
gonna-
definitely
Oh my
write
God.
that.
There are
Would you
so
write a book
many
together,
things.
the two of you?
I might provide material. Marco might probably write it. I'll redline it and then we'll go.
There is a third book, and it will happen.
But there are so many odd questions that we've been asked over the years that you just wouldn't think to even that there was a question. Like a New Yorker said to me once, "How do I post a letter?" This was a while ago, I have to say.
Yeah.
And I went, well, like you do in the States. I mean, you go and you get a letter, and ours are red. They're on every street corner. Post a letter. And he went, I have a doorman. I give my letters to my doorman. Oh, of course you do. Of course you do.
Everyone has a doorman.
Yeah. So it's just things like that you just take for granted. That people say dishwasher salt. What is that? Where can I put it? Is it salt from the table? No, you have to go to a supermarket. It's a special salt. Really? I mean, it's just things that we just do every day that they just haven't got a clue. And equally, if we had, Brits go abroad, same thing.
But everybody has things that are important to them that might not be as important to somebody else. And I can imagine the culture thing. So someone moving from LA compared to New York has different.
Oh, it is very different, and expectations probably a massive part of influence as well.
And in many ways, service satisfaction comes from a recognition that if it's important to you, it's important to us, and though it might not.
So talking about kind of placing importance on things, if you could have 3 words to describe what home means to you.
I think chaos and happiness.
Ah.
Chaos and comfort.
Chaos and happiness. Okay, got it.
I mean, based on
Come for coffee.
Coffee. Okay.
you're for the space between.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. That's good.
That's good. That's a good name.
Especially for yeah. Funny that.
There you go. That's
Lovely.
fantastic. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much. It's been great.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks.
Thanks so much for watching this episode of Memory Lanes.
This podcast is brought to you by the Oracle Group and Define Creative.